Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with David Lucarelli. How you doing, David?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see your face again.
Yeah, you were on here a while ago. This is your second appearance, right? Yeah, second.
That's right. I was on here when I was doing the Kickstarter for Tinseltown Losing the Light.
Right, and you also had like another book with that too, the Children Crusaders.
Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not even close. Yeah, children. I got children. Yeah, I got that too. Yeah, it's unfortunately when I get books, I put them on a pile, then I put other books on top of it, and it's right here. It's right here. I got
Okay.
the top. But I read Tinseltown. I love both volumes, regular Tinseltown, then the sequel, Losing the Light. I got to say, I like Losing the Light even better because it was for those of you who don't know, Dave Lucarelli. He was from Alternate Comics. Was that your first comic?
No, we did Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade before that.
Oh, okay. So that came out first, but I got to know you through a Tinseltown. It was a 4-issue series from
Five
Alternate.
issue.
I'm batting 1,000 tonight. I'm batting 1,000. Good night, everybody. But it was based on your now I'm doubting everything. That it was based on your mother or grandmother.
Well, so it was kind of my tribute to my mom because my mom was a police officer for the Pittsburgh Police for over 20 years. But it was inspired by some historical circumstances. Around 1915, Universal Studios was kind of a proto feminist organization in that they had female police officers, a female mayor, but it was an interesting dichotomy because they also weren't above marching them in short skirts and
Right.
parades and things like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because the character she puts on the police uniform, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice police uniform, but I guess I'm thinking with a 2025 mind. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Right.
it's like, oh, you could kind of see almost her ankles or something like that, and that she's getting wolf whistled. But they gave her a phony gun,
Yeah.
but yet people responded to the uniform. When I don't want to spoil it, but when people saw something bad happen, they ran to get her to help, and
Yes.
good at it, and she turned out to be a good police officer. I thought it was, these days everything's woke, everything's progressive, and I'm about as anti-politically correct as you could possibly get. But it
Right.
was an excellent story based on real things. She wasn't superhuman. She wasn't the Mary Sue, and
No.
and she didn't do anything wrong. She was right. She wanted to be a cop, but she was like farmed out to be like a secretary. She was unhappy. You know, and then and then the second story. I don't want to spoil it. You could still get this on Alterna Comics, right? And you can
Yes.
still get it. Yeah, I recommend it. It's a really good series. Then the second series, they go off into Mexico, and it's like a whole, like, you kind of. I never understood like why we got into World War I and then Tinseltown 2. You gave me a good reason why it was necessary.
Yeah. Well, the twist reveal at the very end of Tinseltown 2 is uh is historically accurate.
Right?
That
Yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah. Well, you got to sell the public on the idea. Yeah. I don't know. I think if there were sexy cops in real life dressed in like bathing suits, I think people would commit petty crimes just to get frisked. So I don't know.
Maybe so.
I don't think it would stop crime. Hey
Yeah.
Emily, how you doing? How you doing? And I've said this to you directly to your face. I said this on Twitter, and I say this to anybody who brings up Tinseltown. In a healthy comic book industry, Tinseltown would be the toast of the town. It would be celebrated.
Well,
People would be talking about it. It would be nominated. Again, I don't want to bring up politics, but like comic books is kind of left wing. And your comic, Tinseltown, does what the left wing, or at least comic books, pretends to celebrate. But I think they just have a problem with Alterna Comics, so it was kind of ignored. But
yeah, I mean, I
I'm
do
trying
dream
to
of
be
a
as
world.
tiptoey as possible around the politics.
I do dream of a world in which we could be judged by the content of our comic books.
Right.
Um, but unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
I will say, it's interesting because um, I have some conservative friends and some conservative fans of the book. And I think, I mean, I'm just projecting here maybe, but I kind of feel what they get out of it is that Abigail, the female police officer in mind, and her boyfriend, Dan O'Leary. They're kind of each other's rocks, and they kind of lean on each other in this very unmoored, decadent, indulgent, amoral world of Hollywood. They kind of lean on each other and keep each other together and keep each other sane. And I think that maybe kind of appeals to some people that come to the book from a more conservative perspective.
Well, I bought it because I'm an Alterna fanboy, so I just got everything from Alterna, and I would rather be. And I was pleasantly surprised. Abigail to me was like a well-written, enjoyable character that I sympathized with.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah. She didn't do any, like, a lot of the times, like they replace like strong girl boss with just an insufferable woman. You know what I mean? Like she was sympathetic. She knew what she wanted to do. She loved her dad. Her dad, was a cop. You know what I mean? And we've all been stuck in a job that we didn't like. I read a statistic. 85% of Americans hate their job.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that when I was 34 years old, and I hated my job. And I was like, I got to switch.
What were you doing when you were 34?
I was a public school teacher.
Oh, okay. What did you teach?
I was 30 years old, and
okay.
And it took me about 2 years. Now I'm a construction worker. I didn't plan on being I just planned on not being a public school teacher anymore. I applied for every post office, cop, court officer. I mean, I was too old to be a cop or whatever. I applied for every possible thing, and I took a electrical test. Oh my God, was that the toughest test? I came out of the test going, I bombed that. It turned out I did really well on it, enough that they called me really quick because they went by numerical scores. I was like, oh my God. So like within a year of mentally quitting my job, you hear that term, people mentally.
Yeah.
And now I forget how old I was, like 34, 32, I was the apprentice. And it was right when that movie, the 40-year-old version came out. So everybody was calling
I worked on that one. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. Everybody was calling me the 40-year-old apprentice. It was just funny. They were photoshopping my face on the poster and hanging it up.
Now, let me ask you this, because I'm the son of, my mom was a police officer, but my dad was a teacher. What did you hate so much about teaching?
Again, I told you earlier that I am the most unpolitically correct person you could ever meet. Yeah. Brutally so. I won't compromise. Like I've lost friends because I'm just like, dude, I'm not, I'm not apologizing for what I think. Like, I'll be your friend, but if you can't handle this, then I don't know what to do. I don't respond well to emotional blackmail kind of thing, So, but like one of the things, the kids were fine. The parents were the parents. It was in a real bad school district. Okay. And the very first time a kid, he wasn't doing his homework. Yeah. So I tried everything. I was nice to him. First off, I did the biggest mistake in the world. I tried to be the cool teacher, and that took me till Christmas to fix that mistake. So my second year, I came out strong and then eased up as the year went along. But I had one kid, he just wouldn't do his homework. So I finally called his parents. So I've been a teacher for 3 years. This is the first time I'm calling a parent. Yeah. And the next day I'm in the principal's office, and the principal says to me, so-and-so's parents just called. They said that you're harassing him. No, that you're harassing us, that you're calling them during dinner time. And I said, this was the first time I've ever called a parent.
Yeah.
You got me? I'll never do it again. Like, everything you do is wrong. Like,
now, what level were you teaching, and what subjects?
This was third grade in a public school, so you teach everything.
Okay.
And that's another thing is I have a degree in Roman history. I wanted to be a college professor, but they weren't hiring Roman professors I literally went to all the community colleges because I didn't, I had enough to teach at community college level, but they weren't hiring. Everybody was they were overdone. Like, we got more history professors waiting up, getting a phone call. So I went to a job fair, and I walked in. They were like, "Oh, you're a male who could teach third grade." I was like, "I could teach Roman." You're hired. So like that's how they were for teachers. Right. So
see, that's interesting because my dad had a PhD in medieval history. Right.
Oh, I would love talking to your dad.
Yeah. His emphasis was on the Canterbury Tales and the Arthurian legends. and with like a minor in Shakespeare. And his dream was to teach that kind of stuff in a small liberal arts college somewhere where people really valued and cared about all that stuff.
The jacket
And
with the patch on the elbow and a pipe, just like
exactly. He couldn't find that to save his life, so he ended up teaching primarily at a community college. And if you become an English teacher, it's because you love reading great, well-written literature. He loves Dickens, and then you end up reading hundreds of papers poorly written by people that don't care at all about the stuff that you're trying to teach them. And so, he kind of achieved your dream of teaching at the community college, and he hated it. So maybe that'll make you feel better.
Well, I mean, again, grammar school teachers are a special breed. I wanted to teach Rome and in the beginnings of like European civilization and talk like the Sumerian Empire and Babylon and stuff like that. And instead, I got a book. Because my first year I was teaching first grade. A. All right, can we move on? Do you guys get A yet? Let's move on because this is B. Okay, we can finish the whole alphabet in an hour if you kids just sit and like, you know what I mean? I just didn't have the patience for it. But I mean, I got to be pretty good at it, and the politics, like the principal came in and told me to stop wasting time teaching grammar. I'm like, that's like, how do you not teach grammar when we're doing an English class,
Yeah.
And then I was, a whole bunch of bad politics. I remember once they had the Stanford University. I called them the Stepford Wives. They all came, and the principal guided them away from my classroom. I wasn't in the hallway, but one of the other teachers said that you could see her like physically, like
nothing to see here.
yeah. But my classroom was all the way the last classroom on the left, and they like made it. And they walk in. It was a third grade class, and I had rows, and I was the only male teacher in the school. The kids used to call me, it's the boy teacher. I have the boy teacher. And on one wall it was all essays, writing, and on one wall was all math. I mean, yeah. So this was the math wall. This was the writing, and then I had the blackboard over here. And the kids were just quiet as can be, and we were doing our work. And one of the teachers was like, "Can I take pictures of this?" And they were taking pictures of our essays.
Yeah.
And she goes, "What grade is this?" And I said, "This is third grade." She goes, "I thought this was a fifth grade classroom by these essays." Thank God they didn't go to the math, but by the essay, So she right in front of the class, she goes, "What do you do? Like, how do you get the kids to write this well?" I said, "Well, I take everything from the Stanford University and the Columbia University Teachers College. I put it all here on my desk, and then I throw it in the garbage, and I teach what the nuns taught me back in Catholic school." And they all in unison went, "You can't do that." And I said, "You thought this was a fifth grade classroom, and now you're telling me," I said, "Does it matter which method we use to teach?" And then she goes, "Why aren't these kids in cooperative units?" So I said, "Ask the kids." So luckily she picked the perfect kid. And she went right to this girl, and she goes, "Do you like sitting by yourself, isolated and alone?" Like she fed her, you know what I mean, leading the witness. Like, and the girl goes, "No, he stabs me with the pencil. I have my own space, and nobody bothers me." I was like, so they all just like walked away shaking their heads. But I'll never forget, the teacher told me, she goes, "This is your first year with the standardized test." She goes, I just want a passing grade." I was like, "Okay, all right." And oh my God, was I nervous. I thought that meant if I failing averages, I got the highest average in the school.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And she said, "That's good for a start." I was like, but it was like, I just remembered the nuns. I just taught like the nuns taught me. Like,
now, did the nuns rap you on your knuckles with the ruler if you tried to write with your left hand, if you're left-handed? No, that's what they did to my dad.
I was, believe it or not, I was too young for that. Believe it or not, I was too young for something. But there was a couple of kids older than me, and my friends older, because we went to the Catholic school. They said they remember being tied.
Oof.
And my wife says she remembers in Canada. So they did it longer in Canada because she's left-handed. But my wife has beautiful handwriting, like she should be, I don't know. I was gonna say handwriting models. Like, does that even exist in the world? But like her handwriting. But her grandfather used to make her practice handwriting.
Oh,
because
wow.
that was big in her family. But
it's a lost art. Kids today can barely like sign their names.
Could you write script now?
I can. I don't, but I could.
I tried to write out, like, you know, we both, you and I do the same thing. We both write scripts for comics, but neither one of us draw, right? You don't draw.
Right. I do not draw.
Right. So I tried to write out my outlines, and my hands started hurting.
Mm.
I was like, like it's been so long since I did anything except type, you know. And then I realized I wrote a whole page, and then I'm like, I can't even read what I just wrote. So
yeah, my handwriting's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I somehow still have the blister that you develop from holding the pen, though, even though I barely write. But
that's not, like, I was teaching kids like the kids were like picking up their pencils like this and writing. I'm like, how did you make it to third grade? And the teachers didn't teach you how to hold. You know, it's funny because one of the other teachers came into my class and we were diagramming sentences. And she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Diagramming sentences, like subject, predicate, and you know, the
sure,
parts of speech and everything like that." And she goes, "What does that mean?" I was like, "We're both getting paid the same. Like, you're a teacher. You should, very great. You should, you know what I mean?" So I was just literally taking lesson plans, because I went to old teachers that I was friendly with and took lesson plans and stuff like that. But one thing I couldn't do is I couldn't teach. It was the beginning of this new math. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, this makes no. Why are we overcomplicating? 2 + 2 is 5. You know, 2 + 2 is 5. See how good I am?
There you go. Yeah, you haven't lost a step.
All that complicated math. But you know what I mean? Like, it was all like roundabout. So like my class, they could do math. But then when we got like a standardized test, they were like, "What does this mean?" I'm like, I think it was the first year that we started doing it. I really don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, math is the easiest, simplest thing. You know what I mean? Like, some kids take a little bit longer, but it's so direct. You know, English is tough to teach. Reading is tough to. Reading is the most difficult thing to teach kids. But math is pretty easy, and they messed that up. Like, I'm almost convinced that they're trying to mess it up.
Well, you know, they came into this whole idea of like, you've got to show your work and, you know, show how you get there, even if you get it wrong. And right, that was like the beginning of the whole new math movement.
I got no problem with showing your work, but so like the kids would draw like 2 sticks and then another 2 sticks and then circle it, and then write 4. You know what I mean? That's fine.
Yeah.
You know? But like, I don't know. And then they started, like, word problems is to me, word problems is normal math, because that, like, John, we're getting 6 crates of this, we're getting 4 crates of this. You know what I mean? Like, we do word problems all day long, but they were doing it like in a way that didn't make sense. I don't know. So I was just getting more and more frustrated. And then the final straw was I was literally going to a kid's house to tutor him after school. He lived across the street from the school. And that kid, he just couldn't get it. He couldn't get it. He couldn't write his name. He had a learning disability. I used to tell the mom, we got to sign these papers and we could get him some help.
Mm-hmm.
And then the father said, he's going to be labeled. I said, your son's already labeled. He has no friends. He's failing all the classes. He sits by himself at lunch and cries. I said, now let's get him the help that goes with his label that he already has.
Yeah.
What do you think? None of the other kids notice? And the father's like, no. So at the end of the year, I had to leave him back. So the father, it's the last day of school. You should know, the last day of school, there's chaos. There's kids running around. Everybody, the teachers are worse than the kids. He shows up. It's just like, you know, it's like a John Hughes film. There's just kids running around everywhere, and he's screaming, "You're racist! You're racist!" You know, because his kids get left back. So, so the principal's like, she knows I'm going to lose my temper, so she comes over. And she goes, I said, I got 36 kids in the class. One kid's getting left back. What am I, 136 racist? And I said, was I racist when I was over at your house having dinner, when you were sitting in your underwear drinking beer, when I was tutoring your kid? He said, why do you got to bring that up? I said, why do you have to bring this up in the lobby? You know? So you know what the principal did? She told me to promote him. I said, no. I said, if he can write, here's a piece of paper, here's a pen. If he could write his own name, I'll promote him. And he wrote a big lowercase e and 3 little lowercase e's. And the principal looked at me and I said, yeah. So she signed the paperwork, transferred him over to this teacher, and that teacher promoted him.
Oh, man.
And I said, I'm done. You know? So
yeah, that's sad. I've done a little bit of work as a substitute, and I sat in on like a gym class, right? And, you know, these kids are playing basketball and stuff, and there's this one kid who's like really super athletic and really good at basketball. And I'm watching I'm watching him play and stuff, and period after period is going on, and like the kid's not leaving the class. Like the classes are coming and going, and the same kids keeps playing like more games with the kids that are coming in. And I said to the other guy there, I was like, how is it that this one kid is still like in this class? Like, doesn't he have other classes to go to? And they go, oh yeah, he's failing all his classes. So if he just shows up to school, they let him just stay in the gym all day and play basketball because he's really good at it, And I go, well, yeah, but that doesn't seem like a great solution.
Yeah, give me 8 hours a day for a year to do something. I'll get pretty good at it. Yeah, but that's the way the schools are,
Yeah,
That's the way that, this, like, just don't bother me, kid. Just sit in the back, read a comic book. Don't bother me,
yeah. Speaking of comic books, I enjoyed your comic book.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I recognize it. Like every time I say, "Oh, Dave bought one," thank you.
Yeah, man.
You presented me with an opportunity to shill April 4th. I think a week from this Friday, issue 2 is going to go live.
Cool.
Yeah, I was waiting because we were ready to go live like last month, but I was watching a bunch of campaigns. It seemed like last month was a bad month to launch campaigns. And then a couple of big campaigns came and went already. So I got no competition. I think people are getting their tax returns. I think people are a little bit like hopeful about the economy. And it gave me another month to generate some buzz. I've been asking Renzo, the artist, to release like stretch goal cards. Because you learn this is your third campaign. We'll talk about your campaign in a minute. This is your third. Sure. I'm sure there's things that you do now that you wouldn't do on your first campaign, right? Like,
you learn something every time you do a campaign. Sure.
Like one of the things that I realized was a mistake was, I used all 3 platforms. I used Fund My Comic, I used Indiegogo, and I used Kickstarter.
Okay.
And I staggered them. So 2 months on exclusive here, 2 months exclusive here. You know what I mean? And I put a different cover on each one.
Okay.
And a lot of people said I would have gotten all 4 covers. If you just put it on the first site, that would have been $40, and then they would have paid 1 shipping and handling.
Yeah.
He said, but now I'm not buying the next cover and then paying. I'm spending $40 just in shipping and handling as opposed to $10 shipping.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now let me ask you, how did your campaigns all do relative to each other? I'm very curious.
I kicked ass on Fund My Comic. I did over $7,000. I'm a first time. A lot of people came out and said, I like you. Your comic looks great, but so many campaigns don't deliver. I can't buy your comic. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? I promise it'll come out. We all say that. So I said, okay. I said, but if I'll deliver. I delivered. I was 3 weeks late, but I delivered. And now those people say I'm in on issue 2. So I'm hoping. Cool. Yeah. So I did 7,000 on Fund My Comic, and I recommend Fund My Comic. Luke Stone is the man. He gives you his phone number. I made a mistake in the book. I set up my Stripe account wrong, so I don't know where the money was going to go. And he fixed it. He fixed everything for me. I'm yelling and screaming like at him because that's what kind of lunatic I am. And he's like the coolest cucumber. He's like, it's okay, John. You know what I mean? And he still answers my phone calls. So what a good guy. You don't get that on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Then I went to Kickstarter, and I think I did maybe just over another 1,000 on Kickstarter. Okay. And then on Indiegogo, I did about $400. And Indiegogo was the most difficult and unintuitive of the platforms. So I'm done with Indiegogo. I mean, I don't even know if I was shadow banned on Indiegogo, but Kickstarter was I can't turn away $1,000. I'm not that's so I'm going to do Fund My Comic probably like 2 or 3 months. And then I'm going to do a mirror campaign on Kickstarter, like nothing different, because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. Because I know there's some people who will only be on Kickstarter. You know what I mean? And I know that there's some people who will only be on Fund My Comic. And for the small amount of people on Indiegogo, I'm sorry, Indiegogo guys, to me, it was a little bit more trouble than it was worth.
They'll find you. Now George Bonnie's asking, well, I assume issue 1 will be available too from the second campaign.
Yes. I overprinted because I was just at a threshold. And I'm sure Dave can tell you, anybody who's did a Kickstarter, it's economies of scale.
Sure.
You know what I mean? The more comics you print, the more per comic, the cheaper it'll be. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to overprint. I was going to overprint anyway because comics are going to get damaged. People are going to be like, "Oh, I didn't know about the campaign," or "That looked good. You actually delivered," which did happen. So I overprinted more than I planned on it just to get a better rate.
Yeah.
So yes, long answer to a short question. Yes, issue 1 will be available, and we're building the campaign now. The other thing I learned is I put 4 covers, and I hired legends like Pat Broderick and Michael T. Gilbert and Mike Gustovich to do covers. They ain't cheap.
Yeah.
And the poor Michael Gustovich I only released on the Indiegogo, so nobody bought it because people like, I already bought your comics. So I have plenty of the Michael, Gustovich covers. So I'm gonna make a bundle deal.
Okay.
I got. Oh, and the other mistake that I did was I didn't show the art to the stretch goal cards until they actually got released. Now I'm showing them, and people are like, that is so cool. What one guy saw one of my characters, goes, I'm getting that tattooed. That is awesome. I'm like, what if he's a jerk in the comics? Wait till the comic comes out. Maybe he's a guy you won't like.
Now, are you doing any appearances at cons?
I didn't do any yet because I didn't have any material. I got the comic in November. I don't know if you know, but in July I was in a car accident and I broke my neck, so I was out of work.
No,
I was out of work for months, and I used up all my time off, vacation time, disability time. So I went back to work, and I can't take any time off. You know what I mean? Until the next year. So unless there's weekend comic conventions around here, like Vaughn Coleman. I don't know if you know Vaughn Coleman. He does a comic. He lives in New Jersey. He always keeps me up to date about local conventions. Okay. So I would like to do. I just because I never did it. I like trying new things.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I think now that you have your first book out, once you get your second one out, and you've got a little more vacation time saved back up, you should definitely try one. See what you think.
I don't know if you know Paul Thayer does project analysis. That guy, if there's somebody setting up a table with the comic book somewhere in the United States, that guy is there, and he's got this. He sells. You know what I mean? He he'll sell water to Aquaman kind of guy.
There are guys like that. Yeah.
I wish I could. I'll talk to you, and that's my problem. I could see myself at a booth next to. We're talking about Space Ghost for 45 minutes, and then I'm saying goodbye to the guy, and I'm like, wait a minute, I forgot to sell him a comic.
Right.
So. You have a new whole new thing. So we already talked about Tinseltown and Children's Vampire Crusade, and now you have where is the? Let's get your link.
Yep.
And you have a new campaign.
I have a new book. Yeah, it's a classic horror anthology in the vein of EC Comics and the Twilight Zone with a modern twist. It's called Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales. And I wrote all 3 stories in it. And then there's different artists for all 3 stories, including Tinseltown's Henry Ponciano.
Oh, good.
And a bunch of other really cool artists. Dr. Zomba is a character. I don't know if your audience is familiar, but there used to be these shows called spook shows that were really popular in the 1950s. And what they were kind of spooky magic shows that would tour around the country in movie theaters, and they would put on the spooky magic and maybe a little burlesque and a seance. And then at the climax, right before they showed a couple horror films, they would have what was called a blackout sequence where the entire audience is enveloped in total darkness and they experience supernatural phenomena they can see, hear, feel, and touch. And they had all kinds of tricks to make that happen. Well, this is before the days of haunted houses and horror TV show hosts and before immersive theater was even a term. I went back, I studied the ghost show manuals from the 50s, and I did a spook show revival show called Dr. Zomba's Ghost Show. And we did 2 sold-out runs at the Hollywood Fringe Fest and for Halloween. And then
you literally did a show.
Yeah, we did the live show, Dr. Zomba's Ghost Show. So then we did 3 performances. I did not play Dr. Zomba. No, I wrote it. I produced it.
Okay.
And we did 3 performances at the Midsummer Scream Convention, which is a Halloween horror convention. And then I did some research. I found out there's actually a connection between the ghost shows and comic books. So one of the biggest, they call them ghost masters back in the day, Dr. Neff.
You bring that up.
He would hand out a comic book as part of the program for his ghost shows. And then he actually appeared as himself in a bunch of comic books as what they called a ghost breaker, right? So the conceit was that he would, criminals were trying to rip people off by imitating supernatural phenomena, right? And then he would debunk them, kind of like Houdini, and he would be the hero that saved the day. So once I realized that there was this historic connection between ghost shows and comic books, I wanted to make sure that my characters from my ghost show were the host for my horror anthology comic.
Oh, cool. That's pretty cool. This, apropos of nothing, but when I lived in Albuquerque, they had a movie theater called the Lobo, and they would have like freak shows and things like that. And one of the things that they did was they showed a Charlie Chaplin movie, and they had an orchestra. You know, I love stuff. I'm sure, I live in New York. There's got to be a place where they show all that. I'm just going to go down the comments, and then I'm going to bring up your campaign. We'll look at the trailer and everything like that. You were talking about she has a boyfriend, a wholesome relationship. Sounds like a plus. Yes, it is a sweet relationship of two people. Oh, I'm selling your comic for you.
Oh yeah. By the way, Tinseltown and the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade are all also available on tiers and add-ons in this campaign.
There you go. Your nephew is an electrical apprentice. First off, hello, George Bonnie. It's good to see new names. And does he work in New York? And if so, I got to sell him a comic book if he's on the same job as me. You could have been paid to think about Rome. I still think about Rome every day. And that's why my character, the Patriarch, is modeled after. He's got the purple for the emperor. He's got the Roman insignia. You know.
And I saw in that trailer that you're selling that actual shirt, right?
Yeah.
That looks really cool, man. Do you got one of those?
Yeah, I got them now. If anybody, $35, PayPal me at johnslongbox@yahoo.com.
Wow, that looks really cool.
Yeah, this company really does good. And I got the Mary Sue shirts. I sold out of them, a box of already, and they only take 2 weeks. You could see in the trailer. I didn't edit out the name of the company, Something Apparel.
Okay, now who did your trailer? Because your trailer looked really cool too.
His name is Kyle Prometheus. He sent me a trailer for my first comic, and I absolutely loved it. I would be remiss if I didn't say Phantasmagoria also sent me. She does the closing trailer, so when at the end, she does, and they just sent it to me. So I asked Kyle if he would do trailer for issue 2. I really liked it. You know, offered, to pay him. He hasn't sent me a bill yet, so waiting for the bill. You know, I'm not asking him to do anything free. Yang Zhang Zhao says hello.
Hello.
Have you been on his channel?
I have not.
Oh, my first grade teacher made me write with my right hand. Oh, it was a public school. Yeah, Marcus, you're older than me, right? My first grade teacher is a nun who threw Bibles at kids. There you go.
Oh no, I hope she didn't have good aim.
I had a public school teacher who'd throw erasers at people, and you'd get hit in the face, and you'd have chalk, and he called it a fuzz sandwich. So we thought it was fun.
Yeah, right. At the time.
Bloody nose and a fuzz sandwich. This guy's cool. We didn't realize he was rage guy. Diagnosis is the first step to solving a problem. That taking responsibility for that. Yeah, he's talking about me. Yeah. For Heroic Tales. What Geeks Do made the opening punky John's Long Box. Nice. If you stay drama free and actually be nice to people, Did you ever see that movie PCU?
I remember the advertisements. I don't think I actually saw it.
Yeah, one of the girls joins like the womenist movement, and she goes to a party, and the guy's like, "You want a beer?" And he gives her a beer, and she's like, "What's going on?" And she goes, "You mean if you're nice to guys, they just give you stuff?" So if I'm nice to people.
By the way, I want to say, I've read hundreds and probably realistically thousands of superhero comics. I know that it's hard to do a new, fresh take on the superhero genre and come up with ideas and things that you haven't seen a million times in other superhero comics. And actually, you did some cool stuff in the Patriarch that I haven't seen in other superhero comics that felt very fresh,
May I ask what? I mean...
Well, yeah, like everything from the fact that these guys, if they existed in real life, would probably have their own kind of obsessive, maybe potentially mentally deranged fans that would, follow them around and things like that, to the fact that, he was, sort of as the patriarch of the family, that he was into things like hunting and things like that, which, I mean, I thought it was like a really interesting take, because those are two things that seem logical if you think about it, but at the same time, I don't remember seeing that in any other book.
Right. Well, it first off, thank you, because it's nice to hear people saying what I did right, because everybody's telling me what I did wrong. So it's nice. It's nice to hear. But that hunting sequence, spoilers if anybody didn't read my comic, he swoops down and grabs an elk and brings it home for his family. That was the most controversial thing. In the second story, there was a panel that I almost cut out of the book because I thought it would. Ron Mosicki drew it exactly like I asked him to draw, but sometimes you don't realize how disturbing something is until you see it in front of your face. And I almost killed the story because nobody complained about that, but people complained about killing the deer. And I'm like, well, I lived out in Albuquerque. I was in bars literally where guys would come in with an elk. That's what inspired it. Bring it to the bar, and that was their tab for the season.
Well, okay.
You know what I mean? So outside of New York or the big cities, people still hunt, ladies and gentlemen. And
I mean, I eat meat and I know where it comes from. So
right, like I would starve to death in a wheat field. If you put me in a bunny hatch with a knife, I'd probably be petting all the animals until I starved to death. I don't know how to prepare my own food.
Yeah.
But I'm not the manly man that the patriarch is, and there's reasons why his family is off the grid. Bruce Wayne doesn't explain who he is to everybody because he's got secrets. Just imagine you had 7 kids.
True.
And a wife that's scarred. You know what I mean? I didn't really explain that the first issue. And yes, I the spin on the Lois Lane character, the reporter that's kind of obsessed with them, that she's got a story too that's probably be told in issue 2 or 3.
Okay.
Because if this campaign does good, the patriarch's getting his own issue, his own comic. So Heroic Tales will be a rotating cast of characters, and the patriarch. The Nolan only managed to hit 1 kid, not a great average.
Well, not if you're that 1 kid.
So we were talking about, somebody said something about ghosts. Spooky.
Yes.
I think ghosts are the most mysterious monsters because you never know what they could do, and they could seriously mess with people's minds.
Absolutely.
So, do you have rules? Like, I know this campaign, is this more humorous or is this like traditional horror?
Well, so the introductions to each story are kind of campy and humorous in the sense of like, Tales from the Crypt or Svengoolie or something like that. But the stories themselves are actually played very straight horror. But it's hard to sell an anthology because you can't tell the story premises for everything.
Right.
But if you play the trailer, I think that's probably the best way to give people an idea of what it's about.
Okay, I'm gonna make this big, and I will play the trailer.
Abacab Studios presents, from David Lucarelli, the creator of Tinseltown and the Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, a classic horror anthology with a modern edge. Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales.
Join me, Dr. Zomba, your ghost master host. The lovely Cyrena, our trusty if disgusting companion Igor. And Count Dracula himself. For terrifying tales from the past, the present, and an uncertain future.
In the tradition of EC Comics and the Twilight Zone,
Remember, kiddies, everyone who buys this comic will die.
Yeah, so that's the trailer.
Now, wouldn't it be funny if you put poison in the ink and they literally did die?
Well, spoiler alert, everybody who doesn't buy the comic will also die too.
Oh, okay. Because all right, so I might as well buy it then. I might as well.
Yeah. You got nothing to lose.
So, you mind if we look down at?
No, by all means, yeah.
First off, I have to notice it ain't a comic book unless there's a hot redhead in it. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't make the rules. That's just the way comic books are designed. You got to have a hot redhead.
That's right. And
Yep.
we got my first Infinity cover there. Irigor's holding an issue.
Oh my God, yeah. You're gonna incept us all.
Yeah.
So this is Dr. Zamba.
That's Dr. Zamba juggling some skulls.
And
then that's the artist for the first story, which is called Ghosted, which sort of takes place inside the world of pickup artists. And that is illustrated by Anna, let me not massacre her last name. I want to say it's Visachik.
yeah,
She's
I always say like
Polish.
pronounceable. Yeah.
But
I
she's
really like this art style. This is like really, really cool. It almost looks like alcohol ads, you know? It's just
she's got a really cool, almost fever dream like, but somewhat manga influenced style. She did a story for an anthology called Nightmare Theater, and I reached out to her, especially because this is kind of like a fairly sexually not explicit, but like in the world of the pickup artists, they're trying to get laid all the time. So I wanted to have like some feminine energy in there too, and have it be a female artist.
Okay. Oh, a female pickup artist?
No, it's a male pickup artist, but he's going out and seducing females.
Okay, I was gonna say, man, if I was in college and I knew there was a female pickup artist, I would pretend to not be interested. Just meet Serena. There we go, hot redhead.
Irina, yeah. Now you'll get to see if you go down a little bit later. Her real name, the actress that plays her in the show, is Tamara Torres, and she's a very attractive young woman that you'll get a chance to see what she looks like in real life as we continue on here.
Okay, this is the same artist from Tinseltown, right?
No, that is Kyle Roberts, the same guy who did the cover. We'll get to Henry's art too.
Okay, I'm just striking out left and right today.
Yeah, that's Henry right there.
Well, different colorist then, because this who this reminds me of? Reminds me of Matt Wagner. Doing page. The coloring really like gives it like a texture that I didn't expect from because Tinseltown has a more traditional comic book coloring.
Well, what's great about Henry is that he can really switch up his styles, right? I mean, the style that he did Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade is different than the style of Tinseltown and different than the style here. This is his color, him coloring himself here.
I really like this. It's different. Yeah, definitely different than Tinseltown. If you told me it was a different artist, I would have believed you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now this third one here, the story is called "The Ghost in the Machine." It has to do with AI, as you can see on the screen there. The artist for this one is a guy named Brandon Perlow, and in addition to being an artist, he's also a comic book publisher. He has a company, New Paradigm Studios, and they publish books like Werewolves and Watson and Holmes. But he also, his day job is he works in the VFX industry. Okay. So he's like a super smart, super talented guy who's definitely got his finger on the pulse of the latest technology. So I figured he was the perfect person to illustrate a story that kind of takes place in the near future and where man is trying to redefine his relationship to technology.
Cool. Now, again, this is an anthology with different stories. Different. Do you give them all the scripts and let them pick, or did you like, your style would be perfect for this?
It was more of the latter. Yeah, I specifically chose the artists. I mean, I love working with Henry, but this was also an opportunity for me to branch out and work with a few new artists as well. This cover here. This is a variant cover, obviously kind of an EC pastiche tribute, and this one is done by Henry as well.
Yeah, I like that cover. Can't go wrong with a little bit of cheekiness, Right,
that's the risque version. Now here you can see the pictures of the actual actors that played the roles in Dr. Zamba's Ghost Show.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's Dr. Zomba up top. That's David M. Beach. Tamara Torres played Cyrena. Care Lordigan played Irgor, and Robert Reynoso there on the right was Dracula.
Okay. Cool. I like that. That looks like it would have been fun. And only 3 shows?
Well, no, we've so far we've performed 13 shows, and
Okay.
fingers crossed, I'm negotiating with somebody right now. We might be bringing it back for a run of 3 more shows this summer.
Oh, cool. That looks like
This is
man,
my first not safe for work comic right here.
Yeah.
That's the
I learned with crowdfunding a little bit of skin. I upped the skin content in issue 2.
Did you?
I ran it by my wife, and my wife's going to Bible studies and everything, and she said, "Oh, that's nice because it's suggestive rather than explicit." So,
Well, here's the thing. I would never do a not safe for work cover for say Tinseltown,
right?
Because to me, I have too much respect for the character.
It's based on your mom, David.
It's based on my mom. But here's what's funny. Not too many people know this. So we occasionally do like some pinups in Tinseltown, and we did one that was kind of a parody of like Miami Vice, and we called it Vice Nights, right? And so it was like Abby and Dan as if they had appeared in an 80s style Miami Vice like TV show. And the first thing it was like, actually it was a mashup between like Baywatch and Miami Vice. So we called it Vice Nights. And the first thing that Henry gave me, I feel like you really channeled Dave Stevens. And it was this total like cheesecake picture of Abby. And I was like, that's great. It's beautiful art. And the world's never going to see it because I don't want to put that out.
Oh man, Dave, you had me at Dave Stevens. You got to DM me that. I won't share it with anybody. I love Dave Stevens.
All right. If you promise.
The most beautiful women, even when Dave Stevens draws them naked, like it's not. Is the word lascivious? I can never say this word. Yeah, it's not. It's still like cute. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could show my wife Dave Stevens, and she's like, "Oh wow, that guy's talented." And Zaktan has an excellent question. Does it count as showing skin if she doesn't have any skin?
Good point. Well, to that, I will only say it ain't no sin if you take off your skin and dance in your bones.
Drown in your bones.
Yeah.
It's funny that's a Tom Waits song sung by Edgar Allan Burroughs, right? And
I think it's like an old novelty song because it was actually one of the songs that we use to introduce the show, the Dr. Zomba show.
Oh, okay. It's on a Tom Waits album, I think what's his name? The guy who wrote Naked Lunch actually sings it.
Oh, David Lynch or
Burroughs.
Burroughs, yeah, William Burroughs.
And I based a D&D campaign on that. My players were resting in the woods, and a stereotypical gypsy family in the caravan showed up and nursed their wounds and healed them all, and then they all started dancing and then they literally they were stripping down, and it was funny because my friends, bunch of guys, and like they're all getting undressed, and they're like, "Oh, we got to get out of here." It's never good. It's never good when people get naked, and then they all started taking off their skin, and there were skeletons and attacked them. It was fun.
Nice.
I like stories based on songs.
Definitely.
And here's where you can get this. Marcus is reminding me that you're pitching a comic, World at War Comics.
Hey man, I was on his show. That was a good time. Thank you for having me on.
He's great. I was on his show too. He's a lot of fun. Good. I could have talked to him for hours.
Oh, definitely.
Early bird.
Yep. Now, unfortunately, the early bird perks are all gone, so you can't get that anymore. But that was for like the first 60 bucks.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
A free ghost.
You get a free ghost inside, and you get that. Now you get it early if you were an early bird, but you get it inside every issue, digital or physical. And if you're wondering how that happens, you're just gonna have to, back the Kickstarter to find out.
Yeah, you open up the box, and the lights. You're doomed. Little do they know that you're also a witch doctor.
Yeah. And there's a little bit closer up pictures. There's Cyrena.
Irgor.
And there's if you're unfamiliar with the spook shows, there's some posters, and they were infamous for promising, these amazing things, 1,000 ghosts in the theater descend upon you, and all this stuff that, they were literally mostly suitcase shows where there'd be like 4 to 6 people working the shows. But they came up with all kinds of clever gimmicks to
Yeah.
make it seem like that was what was happening.
Oh, is this actual videos of your show?
There's some little videos there, not the entire show, but enough to give you a taste of, the kind of thing that it was.
And you don't do any acting?
What's funny is I did a little bit of acting like in middle school and high school. I was in a play with Billy Porter. I don't know if you guys know, he's like a big Broadway star. He was in Kinky Boots or whatever. I mean, like, he's like seriously this amazing star. And he played Fagin in a production of Oliver when I was in middle school that I had a small role in. And even back then he was like, light years above us. But
yeah, I think very rarely, like, I think actors are born with it.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, musicians are born with it. Like, very rare, like, I'm not born with any musical talent. If I spent 20 years, I would be competent, but I'd never be a Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? Jimi Hendrix was born with something. Peter O'Toole was born with something. Maybe I could probably deliver a line if I practiced and had direction or whatever. But I tried acting, and it was, the less I say about it, the better. I tried stand-up comedy. I tried everything. I like trying things.
Well, that's good, man. That's healthy. That's how you figure out, when you step outside your bubble, that's how you figure out who you really are and what resonates with you.
Yeah, I'm a guy who belongs in the basement. That's what
okay. I see Zach Tan says, this isn't another Sea Monkeys type product, is it? Well, interesting. You should say that. You have to back it and find out.
I remember my friend Mike got Sea Monkeys finally. More like, we knew we were getting scammed.
I mean? But that's like, kind of half the fun, right?
Yeah, we're like, but how are they going to? And we got this.
How are they going to scam you? It's brine shrimp, is what it is.
Brine shrimp that just stunk. It smelled like the wharf at low tide.
That's a cover of Ghost Breakers. Remember, I was telling you that Dr. Neff appeared as himself in a whole series of comic books. That's an example of one of those books.
I went 1948. I was like, is that too early for Vincent Price to be the model? Because that's what the character looks like. He looks like
a little bit, yeah.
That's pretty cool. So you were saying that there was these spook shows, they were like from the 40s and the 50s, and then they just went away?
Well, what happened was, the theaters, the stages in front of the theaters kind of got smaller. So by the time the early 70s rolled around, they kind of phased out. But you can be in the book.
Oh, okay.
You can be drawn as a background character. We have 3 of those rewards at the top end, and 2 of them are already gone. So one lucky person can still be in the book.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's interesting. Spook shows, and there's Tinseltown. Yep. They've made a kind of revival just in the last few years. I mean, there was our show. I know there's a couple other shows that are being produced around the country. And then this past Halloween, there was one down in downtown Los Angeles that was done by magician Rob Zabrecki that I went to. He came to my show. I went to his show, and it was very cool.
What is werewolves?
So werewolves, remember I was saying Brandon Perlow, the guy that is illustrating the Ghost in the Machine story, his company, New Paradigm Studios, this is a book that he put out, and he said, hey, Dave, I'll be happy to attach werewolves to this because it's also kind of a spooky horror book. It's a little bit more YA, but anyhow, so yeah, you can get it actually at a discounted price, $2 cheaper than the cover price, and autographed by Brandon and the author of the book through this campaign.
I got to ask because the more I talk and the more you learn about yourself through conversation, believe it or not. But I learned that I hesitate to say OCD because I've never been diagnosed, but like I'm starting to recognize I have, like, one of my big things is continuity. Now, This is an anthology. Or is each story its own world? Like, or like the rules ghosts apply in every story?
So ghosts is there's definitely a ghost in the first story. I mean, they're not all technically ghost stories, but they're all spooky horror stories to some degree or another. And there's no overlap between the worlds of the stories. The connective tissue is Dr. Zamba and the rest of the characters from the Ghost show introducing every story.
Okay, because I'm starting to realize that I had like I forget who I was talking to. I think it was Mike Barron, and he was saying like monster stories are great, but you have to be consistent with the monster. Like if he goes, you could break the rules of vampires. Like Twilight was his example. Like, but that was their rules for vampires. And
Yeah.
Harry Potter had these rules for magic or whatever. So I was just wondering about that. Like, I'm making another comic called Eddie is Doomed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a kid who collects. Well, he's a 35-year-old guy who collects comic books.
Okay.
His whole life, he's the slogan was "We are all Eddie." Which he's just he's us. He goes to the comic book store, and his life is so easy. He the first job he got, he walked down to the supermarket, got a job, and that's the job he's stuck with. Now his dad's retiring. It's time to. He's moving to Florida. He's got to get his own place, and he's devastated. He goes to the comic book store and he finds out that the comic books company, Top Comics, is changing the continuity. They get rid of the Golden Age and Silver Age. It's Crisis on Infinite Earths. So he's doing. Anyway, I couldn't make that comic. I was like, it's such a good idea but how can I tie it into Heroic Tales? And I finally found one way to connect it.
Okay.
That you know what I mean? So I was just wondering if your stories, like, did you bend over backwards to make? But
not at all.
And I want to talk about you're a musician and you made music too.
Yeah. So before I started making comic books, I've played in bands my whole life since high school. And so one of the things you can get, I was in a band for about 10 years called Dame Fortune, and in the Los Angeles area, if you were into like Kiss, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, all put in a blender with a little bit of Gothic influence, that was our band. And we did 3 albums and a DVD. And I still put out the occasional song under the name Dame Fortune. But unfortunately, we're not like really a touring playing band anymore. Our drummer was killed in a car accident years ago.
God.
That kind of took the wind out of our sails. But, there's some geeky influence there as well. We do a song based on V for Vendetta. We do a song called The Days Are Just Packed that was inspired by Calvin and Hobbes. So, if you're into hard rock music and you're a geek like me, you probably like Dame Fortune.
Yeah. I know you're a Kiss fan. I've seen you on Twitter a few times talking about Kiss a few times.
Anybody that's met me for 5 minutes knows I'm a Kiss fan.
I will go on record as saying as much as Gene Simmons has ticked me off in the most recent couple of years, the first 6 Kiss albums are just great rock and roll.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite Kiss song? Now I got to ask you.
My favorite Kiss song is I from The Elder.
Oh my God. I did not expect anybody not only to reference The Elder, that's like the album that shall not be named, but to actually have a favorite from that. I think that was the first Kiss album I didn't buy, and I still don't have. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because being a comic book guy, right? I mean, it's basically a comic book kind of / Joseph Campbell mythological concept album about a hero being born in every age to fight the ultimate evil. I maintain that album was, 10, maybe 20 years ahead of its time. It was also the foundations for power metal. If you think about it, it was, very influential in Europe and stuff. But I think it also lends a depth and a resonance to everything, else that Kiss did, because it was the first time that they really seriously played upon the whole idea of themselves as being larger than life heroes, and their fans going through this journey of transitioning into adulthood and finding themselves and being the hero in their own life. So yeah, I could go on and on, man. I'm a big fan.
I listened to it as a kid, and but maybe now you actually inspired me to get back into it. Like my friend Dan, he's like, he every time I talk, he's like, you got to get this Kiss album, you got to get this Kiss, like, because I kind of stopped. I Unmasked, I think what was first, Unmasked or Music from the Elder?
Unmasked was first, then Music from the Elder.
So Unmasked was the last Kiss album, and I have to buy records in chronological order. If I get into a band, this is the hit song. Oh crap! They got 27 records first. Well, I guess I'll get to that hit song sooner or later.
You might be OCD. I think you might be onto something if you have that problem.
I got into Captain Beefheart, and I'm like, I can't get Trout Mask Replica until I get Safe as Milk, until I get all the other albums first, you know?
Yeah.
But my favorite Kiss album is the first album, and Kissing Time is my favorite. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. So, that I could see your first favorite album being the first album, because the first album has some of their strongest material.
Right.
It's that old cliche. You have your whole life to write the first album. And, so many of those songs from that first album were in their live set for 50 years up until the very last show. But Kissin' Time was not originally on that album.
Really?
No, it was originally released. It was only 9 songs. And that song's actually a cover. They've only played it live, I think, maybe once or twice.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my favorite Kiss song is not even a Kiss song. Man,
well,
I'm really good on this.
Yep.
Yeah, of course you've seen Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Of course. I was the perfect age for it. As a matter of fact, here, 1 second. Stay right there.
I'm going to bring back, and I'm just going to look at your rewards while you
okay.
doing stuff. So let's check out Dave's reward. Oh, I'm going up the wrong. So we got Pledge, $1. All books and all variants. There you go. $55 for everything. Can't beat that.
Okay, so now, all right. For those of you who doubted my Kiss credibility, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. These are the Kiss talismans, right? Without them, no powers. And they say, we're just ordinary human beings. And Gene says, not quite ordinary. And Melissa says, that's so cool. That's so mystic. I wish everybody had a talisman. And Paul says, but they do, Melissa. They just don't know it yet.
So which begs the question, what would your talisman look like then?
Maybe a fountain pen, because I'm a writer, right? Maybe like a feather. I used to write with feathers.
That's a good one. That's a good choice. I gotta think mine's a hamburger.
Okay.
Yeah, what was the bad guy's name? The Phantom Abernathy?
Devereaux.
Yeah, Abner Devereaux.
Yeah.
And what was Ace Frehley just so messed up because he basically like he just like grunts and makes noise.
Yeah, they barely didn't give him any dialogue, and actually that's not Peter Criss's voice. He didn't show up for the ADR session, so they ended up just re-looping all of his lines with a different guy.
And they wonder why they didn't follow it up.
But I was like 7 years old or 6 or 7 years old when that movie came out. I was the perfect age, like to see my favorite band on screen being living real life superheroes. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Right. That first scene when they introduce them and they're all on like the beach chairs by the pool.
Yeah.
The woman's name was Melissa.
Melissa. Yeah.
They couldn't even call her Beth, so when he sang Beth to her, it made sense.
Well, yeah, in it, she's not actually Peter Criss's,
right.
love interest. It's David, who disappears because he's Abner Devereaux's assistant, and then Abner Devereaux ends up turning Sam turns Sam into a robot for some reason. I don't know. The plot doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's electrifying whenever Kiss is on screen.
Yeah. The bad 70s effects and everything.
Yeah, Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, and instead of what was the song? But instead of the real song, the fans got outraged because they were singing "Rip, and Destroy."
Rip and Destroy, yeah, which is that they re-recorded "Hotter Than Hell" and they changed the lyrics.
And that just got the fans to I don't know, was it mind control or did they wanted their Kiss songs the way they're supposed to be?
Right. I know some people that were at that show at Magic Mountain where they filmed it.
Yeah, and they made like the animatronic, like the Hall of Presidents. Those came alive and performed, and they were the evil Kiss.
Yes, and then they go into the Chamber of Horrors, and some plots are just excuses for something else like songs.
Right. Just like all those rock and roll movies in the 50s, like Rock Around the Clock and it was just like guy's going on a date. He's going to ask a girl, and then Eddie Cochran plays. You know what I mean? It was just, they didn't have MTV back then. So
That's right. That's right. Well, that's like when the sound came into the movies and suddenly you had all the singing cowboys, right? Country Western music wasn't really a real kind of music until like the sound came into Hollywood and you had the singing cowboys, and suddenly you had all these Tin Pan Alley writers that were taking Appalachian influences and inventing country Western music.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I figured, you know, there would be like radio stations in the 1900s or whatever, you know what I mean? Like local radio stations playing local country. Like I didn't think it would be national until maybe movies, but yeah, if they invented, that's pretty cool. So I'm looking. I think the best deal here. I'm looking at this is $55 for everything.
Well, $55. Yeah, that's like for all the covers basically, and you get digital PDF of the book and the script, and I sign them all for you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I tell this story a lot, but I didn't want to make a digital tier for my comic because I'm an old fart and I believe comics should be in your hand.
Okay.
But I had a couple of people from Europe that was just like, dude, it's gonna be like $40 to ship a comic. They're like, I'll wait until your 6th campaign then and get a bundle. And I'm like, yeah, I got to release it digital.
Well, you know, I mean, I get it. Like, you know, people's money only goes so far.
Right.
These economic times are a little uncertain right now. So for $10, you can get the digital PDF of the whole book. So it's not going to, you know, there's a, that's the low end. That's not going to break you, hopefully.
Okay. So $20 for the A cover. How many pages?
42 pages.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. All right. Okay. 3 different covers.
And yeah, then the not safe for work cover is a little bit more expensive, but you know, I had to pay Henry. So
okay, cool. I'm digging all this. I really like your writing.
Oh, thank you, man.
You know, I made no secret about how much I like Tinseltown and how much I think like the mainstream press should be talking about it. You know, it's everything they pretend to champion, like a female-centric story to, you know, and it was real, you know what I mean? It wasn't ghosts or monsters or space aliens. And I just thought it was like so human and touching. Again, I could rave about Tinseltown, and I, as much as I like Tinseltown, I like the second one better because I love that. Oh wow, it's tied into World War II and going into Mexico, and then spoiler alert, you using the movie studio as a means for like smuggling.
Yeah,
I thought that was so clever, you know.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it is kind of more of a spy story in some ways.
Right. Yeah. And they keep underestimating Abigail. They think she's just a pretty broad. You know what I mean?
They do. But I like what you said, the fact that she's not a Mary Sue. You know, she's not perfect. She doesn't always get it right. But, you know, she's a good person. And when the chips are down, she's somebody that's good to have on your side and in your corner.
Right. And her boyfriend, like, they have a nice relationship. You know,
they do. And what's funny about that is I get asked questions from people sometimes. They're like, Dan's not really what he seems to be, is he? Like, he's not just a good guy. Like, you know, she's going to get the
hammer going to drop.
Yeah. When's the hammer going to drop? And actually, you know, spoiler alert. Yeah, he's a good dude. He is who he seems to be. And he doesn't necessarily, in some ways, he fits less into the whole Hollywood world than she does. And so they kind of help each other navigate that, you know, because he doesn't have a background. He's not particularly well educated or knowledgeable about culture, you know, and art and things like that.
Because he's just like a big, dumb, good-looking guy. Like, or
he's not dumb. Like, I think he is actually very intuitive about human nature and reading people, and you know, but at the same time, you know, he's basically a cowboy that came out to Hollywood.
Like, it wasn't like he went to Hollywood to become an actor or anything like that. He was just
he wanted to fall off horses for a living, basically. And you know, the cliche is he's a real cowboy who came to Hollywood to become a fake one, and she's a fake cop who became a real one in Hollywood.
Right. And, you know, it's funny because that's one of the things I say in my comic, Heroic Tales, is the patriarch James Kelly, his real name is his wife is Merce. They love each other. He's not sleeping around.
Yeah.
You know, to him, the perfect day. Like this guy could fly. He's got superpowers and stuff. But to him, the best day in the world would be home with the wife and kids, fixing the tractor or you know, milking the cow and everything like that.
Right.
You know, he
Well,
would.
I mean, to
But-
some extent, it's probably a reflection of me. You know, I mean, I live in Hollywood, California, but I'm also been married to the same woman for 17 years, and you know, we're not having subaquatic satanic orgies every Friday. I mean, it's like every other Friday. So
Maybe if you did that, Marvel would pick up Tinseltown
maybe, yeah.
or Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny because spoiler for my comic that we would talk about this. Places where strange things happen, and we could all agree, like DC and Hollywood, there's reasons why that, you know, maybe around issue 7 you'll start to see, okay. There's I was talking with Paul Ricochet today actually about doing a page or two for my comic. You know, he did the building designs for Mr. X, which is a big influence on my comic. And
I love Mr. X.
Yeah, we talked
That's
about
a great series.
conspiracy theories. I said you don't get it from issue 1, but it's all conspiracy theories.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So is he still doing Mr. X, or
he designed Mr. X, made the characters, made the city, and then the Gilbert and Jamie Hernandez took it. And I don't think, and then later on he drew it. So he designed it, and I think because he's been on my channel and I just gushed about Mr. X so much, and then he said like a more lucrative job came up and he couldn't turn it down.
okay?
You know,
It's funny you mentioned Mike Barron too. I'm a huge fan of the Badger.
Yeah.
And I think the Badger #1 is like one of my all-time like perfect. Like if I had to give somebody an example of just a perfect issue 1 superhero comic, it would be the Badger.
Yeah, I read Nexus and I read the Badger as they came out. Geez, 40 years ago. So I'm rereading Nexus because Mike just brought back Nexus, and I'm man, it's like so good, and it's so different, you know. And then the same guy wrote Punisher, you know, and now you know it's just so cool. Paul Ricochet is black-pilled. Yeah, Paul Ricochet is Mr. Conspiracy. Like I love conspiracy theories. I don't necessarily believe them, but Paul, you know, I'm an amateur compared to Paul. He is
okay.
Yeah, I dig his work. So talented. I talk too much. So is there anything that you want to say that I haven't been giving you edge to say?
I don't think so. You know, the only thing I'd say is that Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales is a really fun book. The introductions to each story are kind of campy horror fun, and then the stories themselves, I hate to use the word elevated horror because it sounds kind of pretentious, like my horror is way up here and your grassroots horror is just down there in the mud. But you know, they're good stories, they're effective stories. I'm really proud of them. I'm really excited about all the art that all of the artists have contributed. So anyhow, Baron has a Badger graphic novel planned.
Yes.
Well, I will be getting that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the book, and can't wait to share it with people. So, you know, check it out. And if you like what you see, back us on Kickstarter.
Cool. I'm getting messages now. I got to go to RJ's channel for Comic Book Team Up.
All right.
This is the last question I'll ask you. Is this a one shot? Do you have a series of these planned?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. After this, my plan is to do some more Tinseltown, and then as a way to cleanse the palate, if this one's successful, I would love to tell some more stories and some more ghostly tales with different artists in the realm of Dr. Zomba again.
Cool. So you haven't done I just realized you haven't done any classic superheroes.
I haven't. Eventually, there's an idea I have that I would like to get around to that's kind of based on some of the ways my son and I used to play together when he was still into playing superheroes and stuff. So I'll get there eventually. It's on my to-do list.
Okay, I was wondering if you were like, I'm over, because a lot of people said I'd like your comic, but I'm over superheroes. Like I want my, you know, which I guess is fair. Don't get it if you don't like it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I think in my heart, there's always room for one more great superhero comic.
I still love superheroes, guys. I still love them. You know, don't get me wrong. I have a horror story planned. If you know things go well, you know, I don't even want to spoil it. It's going to be disturbing, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be vampires the way vampires should be: horrible, disgusting, rotten monsters. Not romantic. They don't sparkle. You
Right.
don't want to be one, and you don't want to be around one. You know, vampires are monsters. Just keep that in mind. But I'm gonna go.
Okay, man.
Anything
Well,
you want to say before we go?
Nope, that's
I'll
it.
back it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for having me on your channel. And thanks for backing Dr. Zomba's Ghostly Tales.
Yep. I'll be back on Friday. Thanks a lot,
Take care,
everybody.
guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.